You wake up, you function, you respond to messages, you meet expectations. From the outside, nothing is wrong. No crisis, no collapse. Life looks stable. And yet, somewhere beneath that surface, there's a quiet emptiness you can't explain without sounding ungrateful. You don't feel broken enough to ask for help. You don't feel fulfilled enough to feel alive. It's not sadness. It's not depression. It's something colder, more subtle, like living behind glass. What makes this unsettling is that you already sense it. You've noticed how achievements don't land, how comfort doesn't satisfy, how silence feels heavier than noise. This video isn't here to fix that feeling or motivate you out of it. It's here to explain why it exists at all. This is not a single idea. It's a chain. Each part depends on the last. Skipping will feel easier, but it will break understanding. Most people believe emptiness comes from loss, failure, or lack. They assume something must be missing: meaning, love, purpose, direction. But that assumption itself is the first illusion. Emptiness rarely comes from absence. It comes from substitution, from living inside a structure that looks complete while quietly replacing what is real with what is acceptable. Human behavior is commonly misread because it is interpreted at face value. Smiles are read as happiness. Productivity is read as fulfillment. Moral language is read as moral depth. Stability is read as psychological health. But these are performances, not proofs. Modern life rewards surface coherence, not internal alignment. So people learn very early how to look fine without ever asking whether they feel real. Social masks are not worn consciously at first. They are learned through feedback. You express something genuine, and it's ignored or punished. You perform something expected, and it's rewarded. Over time, the nervous system adapts. Expression gives way to presentation. Identity becomes behavior that works. And slowly, without ceremony, the self becomes a role. This is where emptiness begins, not because life is empty, but because it is overfilled with things that are not you. Most people believe they are making choices. In reality, they are maintaining an image. They choose careers that signal worth, relationships that signal normalcy, opinions that signal intelligence or morality. They don't ask what resonates, they ask what fits. And because the structure rewards fitting in, the performance becomes indistinguishable from the person performing it. False morality plays a crucial role here. People don't act morally, they act morally legibly. They learn which values are applauded and which are dangerous to express. Compassion becomes something to display. Outrage becomes something to rehearse. Even kindness can become a social currency rather than a felt impulse. This doesn't make people evil, it makes them hollow. When morality is performative, the self recedes. You begin to notice this emptiness most clearly when nothing is wrong, when there is no external struggle to blame, when life is calm enough that distraction fades. In those moments, the mask becomes heavy. Silence feels uncomfortable because it removes the audience. Without witnesses, the performance collapses, and there is nothing underneath that feels solid. This is why rest doesn't restore you, because what exhausts you is not work, but maintenance. Maintaining coherence, maintaining likability, maintaining the story that your life makes sense. Performance fatigue is not physical, it's existential, and it accumulates quietly. People misread others because they assume behavior reflects inner truth, but behavior reflects adaptation. A confident person may be terrified of stillness. A disciplined person may be avoiding collapse. A kind person may be suppressing rage. A successful person may be dissociated from their own experience. These contradictions are not flaws. They are survival strategies polished into identities. The illusion deepens because society mirrors it back. You are praised for functioning, not for feeling, for coping, not for confronting, for stability, not for depth. There is no social reward for asking whether your life is real to you. So most people never ask. And when they do, it's usually too quietly to change anything. This is why emptiness is so difficult to name. It doesn't announce itself with pain. It whispers through numbness, through boredom that isn't cured by stimulation, through a sense that time is passing but nothing is landing, through the strange realization that even your desires feel inherited rather than chosen. The surface illusion tells you that if life looks fine, it should feel fine. When it doesn't, you assume the problem is personal weakness, ingratitude, dysfunction. But the truth is colder. A life built to be legible to others often becomes illegible to the person living it. And once you've mistaken performance for identity long enough, emptiness is not a symptom. It's a signal that something essential has been replaced so gradually you didn't notice the loss. If the surface illusion explains how emptiness forms, it still doesn't explain why it persists, why people maintain lives that drain them, why they defend structures that quietly hollow them out, why even awareness doesn't dissolve the feeling. To understand that, you have to look beneath behavior and identity, into the machinery that runs them without asking permission. Human beings are not driven by clarity, they are driven by regulation. The nervous system's primary goal is not truth, fulfillment, or meaning. It is survival through predictability. Anything that threatens stability, even psychologically, is treated as danger. This is the hidden engine behind most choices, and it operates far below conscious reasoning. One of the first unsettling truths is that most people do not pursue what they want, they pursue what prevents anxiety. Desire is often retrofitted after the fact. A path is chosen because it feels safer, more acceptable, less likely to provoke rejection or uncertainty. Later, the mind invents reasons to justify it. Emptiness emerges when the story doesn't match the body's quiet knowing. Another truth is that ego is not confidence, it is insulation. The ego exists to protect the self from fragmentation. It constructs narratives of competence, morality, intelligence, and control to keep deeper vulnerabilities sealed away. When life is fine, the ego has done its job well. But that success comes at a cost. Anything that might expose fragility, longing, or ambiguity is filtered out. What remains is a life that feels controlled but lifeless. Conditioning intensifies this process. From early on, people learn what earns approval and what invites withdrawal. Love becomes conditional. Attention becomes transactional. Over time, the psyche internalizes this logic. You don't need external pressure anymore. You police yourself. You anticipate judgment before it happens. You edit yourself preemptively. Emptiness is what it feels like to live under constant internal surveillance. There is also the quieter truth that numbness is often mistaken for peace. When emotional range has been historically unsafe, when expressing need, anger, or confusion led to consequences, the system learns to flatten experience. Highs are dampened along with lows. The result is functionality without vitality. Life feels calm, but not alive. This isn't balance, it's containment. Fear plays a more sophisticated role than most people realize. It doesn't just stop action, it organizes identity. People define themselves around what they avoid. I'm not the kind of person who risks too much. I'm practical. I'm low drama. These aren't traits. They're protective strategies disguised as personality. The longer they're reinforced, the harder it becomes to distinguish fear from selfhood. Another uncomfortable truth is that emptiness often appears when survival is no longer urgent. When chaos recedes, unresolved patterns surface. Struggle once provided structure. Busyness once provided distraction. When those fade, the system has space to register what was never processed. Emptiness isn't created by comfort, it's revealed by it. There is also the role of unconscious loyalty. People remain emotionally faithful to old dynamics long after they've left them. A parent's expectations, a culture's definition of success, a childhood role that once kept them safe. Even when those structures no longer exist externally, they persist internally. Living a fine life that doesn't feel yours can be a form of obedience to a past that still governs you. Perhaps the most disquieting truth is that the mind prefers familiar pain to unfamiliar freedom. Known dissatisfaction feels safer than uncertain aliveness. The system knows how to function here. It knows the rules. Freedom introduces unpredictability, and unpredictability threatens coherence. So the psyche chooses dullness over disorientation, numbness over risk. All of this operates automatically. No villain, no single mistake. just a system doing what it was trained to do: reduce threat, maintain structure, avoid collapse. Emptiness is not a malfunction of that system. It is the byproduct of its success. And because these drivers live beneath awareness, you can't think your way out of them. Insight alone doesn't disarm them. They are not beliefs, they are reflexes. They don't respond to logic. They respond to safety and the absence of it. This is why emptiness persists even when life improves, even when relationships stabilize, even when goals are met. The engine isn't designed to deliver fulfillment. It's designed to keep you intact. And sometimes intact is the opposite of alive. By the time emptiness is felt consciously, it has already been rehearsed for years beneath awareness. What you experience now is not sudden, it is familiar, repetitive, almost predictable. That is because adult behavior rarely originates in adulthood. It is the continuation of unresolved internal arrangements formed much earlier, then refined over time until they appear normal. The psyche does not forget what once kept it safe. It repeats it. Many people believe they have changed because their circumstances have changed. They are no longer dependent, no longer powerless, no longer trapped in the same environments. But internally, the system often remains loyal to the original blueprint. If silence once protected you, you still default to silence. If pleasing others once reduced danger, you still orient outward. If self-erasure once prevented loss, you still disappear emotionally even in safe spaces. This is not weakness. It is continuity. The emptiness you feel when life is fine is often the echo of a self that learned early that being fully present was risky. So presence was traded for performance, expression for control, curiosity for predictability. Over time, those trades harden into patterns. And patterns, when repeated long enough, become invisible. You see this in relationships. People don't choose partners randomly, they choose familiar dynamics. Someone who learned that love required vigilance will feel strangely bored with ease. Someone who learned that affection was conditional will unconsciously recreate conditions. When the old tension is absent, something feels missing. Not because the relationship lacks depth, but because the nervous system doesn't recognize safety as intimacy. The same repetition appears in work, ambition, and identity. People chase milestones not because they care, but because motion once kept despair at bay. Achievement becomes a substitute for permission to exist. And when the milestone is reached, the emptiness intensifies, not because success failed, but because it exposed the absence it was covering. At this level, judgment becomes useless. There is no moral failure here, no lack of gratitude, just unfinished business running in the background. The psyche repeats what it has not resolved. It circles familiar ground because unfamiliar territory was once associated with threat. This is why emptiness feels impersonal and intimate at the same time. It doesn't feel like sadness about something. It feels like something missing from you, as if part of your internal range was muted long ago and never fully restored. You can sense it without naming it. A subtle distance from your own reactions, a lag between experience and feeling, a sense that life is happening, but not fully to you. When you stop judging others through this lens, something shifts. The shallow, the rigid, the performative no longer look like character flaws. They look like protective adaptations. People aren't empty because they lack depth. They are empty because depth was once dangerous, so it was buried, not destroyed. And the same is true internally. The moment you see this, the narrative changes, not into optimism, not into healing, but into clarity. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start recognizing patterns that never asked for your consent. You see that your current emotional landscape is not a verdict on who you are, but evidence of what you survived, adapted to, and normalized. This doesn't make the emptiness disappear, but it does something more unsettling. It removes the illusion that it's accidental. What feels empty now is not a void waiting to be filled. It's a structure built around an old wound that was never allowed to close openly. The patterns you repeat are not mistakes, they are continuations. And until they are seen as such, life will continue to feel strangely distant, functional, stable, and quietly unreal. Not because you are broken, but because part of you learned long ago that being fully here was not safe. When you step back and look at everything together, the emptiness stops looking mysterious. It stops looking like a personal failure or a missing ingredient. It reveals itself as the natural outcome of adaptation. You learned how to survive the world as it was, not how to feel alive inside it. And the world rewarded you for that. It rewarded restraint, performance, compliance, emotional management. It did not reward truth. It did not reward depth. It did not reward inner coherence. This is the quiet contract most people never realize they've signed. The world will take your sensitivity, your curiosity, your rawness, and grind them down into something functional, not out of cruelty, but out of indifference. Systems don't care whether you feel real. They care whether you work. This is why life can look fine while feeling empty. You are functioning exactly as you were shaped to function. The uncomfortable truth is this: the world will break you unless you become ruthless. Not outwardly aggressive, not cruel, not dominant. Ruthless in seeing, ruthless in refusing comforting lies, ruthless in noticing where you disappeared to remain acceptable, where you chose safety over presence, where you mistook numbness for peace. This ruthlessness isn't about fixing yourself. It's about no longer cooperating with the illusion that this emptiness is accidental, temporary, or meaningless. It's about understanding that what you feel is information, not pathology. Sit with that. Don't rush past it. Let the discomfort do its work. And when the silence feels heavy again, remember, it's not asking to be filled. It's asking to be understood.